This happened just a few weeks ago. I'm a nurse at St. Joseph's Hospital and I've worked the night shift for years. Usually I like the quiet, just the soft beeping of machines and the dim lights. But that night was different. I walked down the familiar corridor, the floors creaking beneath my feet. Everything felt normal until I reached room 204. Inside, a man lay in bed, staring blankly at the wall. "Good evening, sir," I said, hoping to get a response. He didn't even blink. I felt a chill creep up my spine. Usually patients greet me. I shook it off and moved on, but couldn't forget about him. Later, around midnight, I heard cries coming from the pediatric ward. There were no kids there, so I paused and listened. The sound was faint, but desperate. I felt uneasy walking toward the ward. The hallway seemed to stretch longer. I peered in, but it was empty. My heart raced as I realized I didn't know where the cries came from. I turned away, trying to convince myself it was just my imagination playing tricks. The next night, I found a note slipped under the break room door. It read, "They know your secrets." I felt a rush of fear. Who could have left that? I didn't have secrets, at least none I knew of. I wanted to laugh it off, but instead felt a knot forming in my stomach. As the nights passed, I kept glancing at room 204. The man still stared blankly at the wall. Sometimes I wondered if he even knew his name. I wanted to talk to him, to help him. But every time I approached his door, anxiety bubbled up. It felt wrong to invade his space. On my final night, I heard the cries again, echoing in my mind as I walked past the pediatric ward. The darkness felt thicker. I hurried down the hallway, praying I wouldn't hear anything else. Just when I thought things couldn't get worse, I heard a hushed voice. "Help me." I froze, my heart racing. I looked around thinking someone might be playing a trick on me. Nothing. Suddenly, I noticed room 204 again. The man was sitting up, still staring into the wall, but the air had shifted. Something felt off. I stepped back, feeling the need to escape. That's when the door creaked open. My breath caught in my throat. I wasn't ready for this. I stood there, paralyzed with fear. "Help me," the voice whispered again, but I couldn't tell where it came from. I backed away, caught between running and staying. Now, I question everything. Were those sounds real? Did that man ever speak? I still remember his empty gaze. I told myself it was a long night and my mind was tired. But deep down, I can't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. No answers, no relief, just a lingering dread. The next night, I stepped into St. Joseph's Hospital with a sense of dread that settled in my stomach. I thought about room 204 the whole way to the nurse's station. Did the man even move? I forced myself to focus on my patients, but my mind wandered back to that empty gaze. Around 11 p.m., I caught a glimpse of something in the corner of my eye. It was a shadow moving down the hallway. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. Still, my heart raced, and I felt that knot in my stomach tighten. I decided to check on room 204. As I approached, the door creaked slightly ajar. I hesitated. What if he was looking for help? I knocked softly. "Hello, can I come in?" I waited. No response. I pushed the door open a fraction, but all I could see was his still form against the dim light. The silence was heavy, almost suffocating. Just as I turned to leave, I heard it again, the faint cry coming from the pediatric ward. "What is happening?" I muttered to myself. The cries were sharper now, filled with desperation. Against my better judgment, I moved toward the pediatric ward, curiosity overpowering my fear. The hallway stretched longer as I walked, each step heavier than the last. I reached the ward and peered inside. The room was empty, yet felt alive, almost as if it were holding its breath. I held my own breath, straining to hear. The cries kept getting louder, but when I looked, there were no children. Suddenly, I felt a sudden cold gust of air and the lights flickered. I flinched, glancing at the exit as I questioned my sanity. In that split second, I heard a whisper directly behind me. "Help me." I spun around, my heart pounding in my chest. Nothing but silence. That's when I realized that I had a choice. I could walk away, pretend it was all in my imagination, or I could confront whatever was haunting this place. A part of me wanted to run, but the other part felt inexplicably drawn to the cries. With trembling hands, I turned on my heel and stepped deeper into the ward. "Hello? Is anyone here?" I called out. My voice echoed off the sterile walls. I approached the nearest bed, and at that moment, I noticed something unusual. There were small, muddy footprints leading out of the pediatric ward. I followed them, my heart pounding with each step until I reached the end of the hallway. The footprints stopped in front of room 204. My breath hitched in my throat. Was it even possible? I took a sharp breath and pushed the door open wider. He was gone. The man wasn't there anymore. The bed was neatly made, a perfect contrast to the chaos swirling in my mind. That's when I saw it, a small toy in the corner of the room, a weathered teddy bear, stained and fraying at the edges. It felt out of place. I picked it up, strangely drawn to it. As soon as the bear touched my fingers, a wave of sorrow washed over me, accompanied by a faint voice in my ear. "You have to help me." I stumbled back, my heart racing. Everything spiraled more than ever. I had to find out what was going on. But as I turned to leave the room, the lights flickered once more, and the door slammed shut behind me. I gasped, backing away from the door. It felt like the walls were closing in, and an eerie tension crackled in the air. I could barely hear my own thoughts over the pounding of my heart. The teddy bear slipped from my grasp and fell to the floor with a soft, muffled sound. "Get a grip," I whispered to myself, trying to shake off the fear. I was trapped with nowhere to run. I looked around the dark room for any escape. The window was locked tight and the walls loomed, draped in shadows. The overhead lights flickered again, and in that moment, the atmosphere shifted. A chill descended, and I noticed the whispers guiding me from the corners of the room. "Help me." The voice was clearer now, more insistent. I turned, looking for the source, but the room remained empty. I slapped a hand against the wall, steadying myself. "Why are you asking for help?" I shouted into the darkness. "Who are you?" My voice cracked, but I didn't care. It felt good to assert myself, even if no one was listening. Suddenly, the bear's eyes caught the light as it glinted ominously. Against my better judgment, I picked it up again, feeling compelled to squeeze it. An image flashed in my mind, a child laughing, but the laughter turned to cries, echoing off the walls. The door rattled violently and I jumped, stepping back. "Please, just let me out," I pleaded, but my words only fueled the darkness. The whispers grew louder, overlapping until I couldn't separate them. Panic surged through me, and I took a step toward the door, ramming my shoulder against it. It wouldn't budge. Then I heard a giggle. The sound was hauntingly innocent, reminiscent of children playing. My mind raced. Was there really a child in here with me? But as I scanned the room, I saw only where the man should have been. My hands trembled as I pressed my ear against the cool, hard surface of the door. I could hear footsteps outside. They were hurried and childlike, almost desperate. "Let us in," they called softly. "We need help." "Help?" I whispered, feeling conflicted. I was terrified, but the voice drew me in, promising answers to everything that didn't make sense. I grabbed the door handle, twisting it, but it was locked tight. Without thinking, I slammed the bear against the door, hoping for something, anything to break the spell. When it connected, I felt a surge of energy pulse through me. The whispers ceased. Everything went still. Then the moment stretched and a shadow flashed under the door. A child's silhouette flickered for just a heartbeat. I jerked back, feeling a surge of adrenaline. "Who's there?" Then without warning, everything went dark. The lights cut out entirely. I stumbled, disoriented, half expecting hands to grab me from every angle. I was alone. Someone has to answer for this, I thought, but I felt a new urgency to find a way out of this nightmare. The darkness pressed in, leaving me standing there, frozen in dread. And that's when I realized I needed to confront whatever was in room 204. With shaking legs, I stepped back into the darkness, seeking the answers that had haunted me since I entered St. Joseph's. The whispers resumed, but this time they were accompanied by laughter, the kind that sent chills down my spine. The laughter swirled around me, echoing off the damp walls, creating a disorienting symphony of innocence and malice. With each chuckle, my heart raced faster. I strained to hear anything else, a clue, a direction, just something. "Hello?" I called out, my voice barely breaking the silence now. No reply. The whispers were quiet, as if they were gathering strength for something. I took a hesitant step toward the door, my hand brushing against the cold, hard floor, hoping it would offer me some sort of guidance. But my fingers felt nothing. Suddenly a soft thud resonated behind me, and I spun around, expecting to see something move in the darkness. Nothing. Just the shadows dancing in the corners, playing tricks on my mind. I was beyond terrified now, but I couldn't let fear paralyze me. This wasn't a game anymore. I steeled myself and made my way towards the window, despite knowing it was locked. I needed to find a way out, and that meant checking every possible escape. When I reached the glass, I grabbed the latch, pulling and pushing, but it didn't give. My breathing quickened, frustration mixed with fear. That's when I heard the laughter again, closer this time. I spun back around, and in the dim light filtering through the cracks, I saw something on the floor. Something shiny. I crouched down, trying to make out what it was. It gleamed, casting a reflection that distorted in the dark. It was a small toy, a bright red spinning top. I picked it up with trembling fingers. The moment I touched it, the laughter faded. The whispers returned, but not in familiar tones. These were urgent, frantic. "Play with us. Come and play." "No." My voice was loud, unsteady but firm. I couldn't let them control me. I dropped the top, and it landed with a soft clatter, right on the edge of the floor. For a moment, I stood frozen, my pulse in my ears louder than the dark. Then, the top began to spin. At first, I thought it was a trick of my mind, but it kept whirling, gaining speed all on its own. I stumbled back, fear wrapping around me like a vice. My survival instincts kicked in. I searched the room for something to break the cycle, something to disrupt whatever was trying to trap me here. I spotted the teddy bear again, lying forgotten near the door. Without a second thought, I snatched it up, windmilling my arm like a child flinging a ball. As the bear soared through the air, the spinning top crashed to the ground and shattered into a million glittering pieces. The world around me froze for a heartbeat, darkness pressing in, the whispers stopped, and the room felt suspended. In that moment, I thought I could hear something. A soft voice, barely audible, cutting through the tension like a whispering breeze. "Don't stop. Please. Help us." But as quickly as the quiet came, it vanished again, replaced by the frantic laughter pouring in from every direction. The sound drained my courage. I glanced at the door, realizing I had no strategy, no plan. Paralyzed, I stood frozen, hearing the echoes of the past swirling around me. Friends, laughter, those who needed help. And then, I felt it. A hand on my shoulder, cold and damp. My scream caught in my throat as I whipped around, still clutching the bear. I came face to face with a figure shrouded in shadows. "What do you want from me?" It was a question I hoped would give me answers, but instead, I felt the warmth of despair creeping in. Then came the words from the shadows. "You're the only one who can set us free." My heart raced as I stared into the uncertainty of the figure before me. It loomed large, eclipsing the dim light filtering in from the cracks of the locked room. I took a discerning step back, ready to bolt, yet the weight of despair anchored me to the ground. "Set who free?" I forced the question out, my voice unnaturally high. The figure hovered closer, and I felt a chill creep down my spine. "What do you mean by us?" It didn't respond. Instead, it pointed toward the shadows, a gesture that sent a shiver through me. And then, without warning, the atmosphere changed. The dark seemed to pulse, and the laughter returned, triumphant and mocking. I turned my back to the figure, seeking an escape from the madness, but dread gnawed at me. "Please, just tell me what's going on," I pleaded, desperation mingling with fear. But no answers came. Instead, The room around me twisted into a nightmarish realm. The laughter morphed into a cacophony of voices, overlapping and frantic. Stories of loss, confusion, and fear poured out like water from a tipped glass. I stumbled toward the door, panic surging. The whispers, now louder, enveloped me. "Help us! Help us! You have to help us!" I pressed my hands against the door, but it felt like a solid wall, unyielding and heavy. "Who are you?" I shouted into the void, hoping for clarity. The answer came like a flash of lightning. A name. A single name echoed in my mind. Evelyn. The sound was familiar but foreign, thrumming against my temples. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the connection, but images began to flash before my eyes. A little girl with messy brown pigtails, giggling, holding onto a red spinning top as she danced in the light of a sunlit summer day. Panic gripped me. "Evelyn," I whispered, my voice trembling. That belonged to someone I used to know. But why was she here? Why were her cries pooling in this wretched place? The shadowy figure twisted, almost as if part of it recognized my breathless call. "Find her! Free her!" it urged. And in that moment, I felt a flicker of urgency replace the dread. Suddenly I realized Evelyn and those forgotten voices were trapped. My heart ached with their suffering, while anger coursed through me, giving rise to a surge of determination. How do I do that? The air thickened with tension, and a distant sound echoed from the depths of the room, a melodic chiming almost like a call. I turned toward it, instinctively knowing it'd lead me to the answers. The laughter receded, giving way to a faint whisper, beckoning me forward. With every step, I forced aside thoughts of fear. I could save her, or at least try. "I will help you," I vowed, gripping the teddy bear tightly. That's when the lights flickered above me, plunging the room into shadows, and everything changed. I felt a shift, a presence behind me. I whirled around, and my breath caught in my throat. A new figure emerged from the darkness, and I realized this one was not shrouded in shadows. It wore a mask. "You shouldn't be here," it said, in a voice I'd never forget. My heart sank. What had I stumbled into now? I stood frozen, staring at the masked figure. Its expression was devoid of emotion, but the air thickened with hostility. "What do you want?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. "Just to warn you," it replied, stepping closer. "You don't know what you're messing with." The words hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. For a moment, I considered running, but curiosity anchored me in place. "Messing with what?" I asked, my fear morphing into frustration. I couldn't be in this nightmare without answers. "You're in a place where hope fades," the figure said, glancing around the room as if warning unseen watchers. "These shadows want to keep you lost. You need to leave before they claim you." Something in its tone sent unease through me. I needed to find Evelyn. "I can't leave. I have to help her," I exclaimed, feeling a swell of defiance. The memories of the little girl flooded back. The laughter, the spinning top, like echoes refusing to fade away. The figure's masked head tilted, as if assessing my resolve. "You don't understand how dangerous this is," it countered. "You're already too entangled." "Entangled?" I asked, panic creeping back into my chest. I raked my fingers through my hair, suddenly feeling suffocated. "What do you even mean?" Then, a sound cut through the air. The melodic chiming grew louder, insistent. The masked figure's posture changed, tense and alert. "No, don't listen to it," it warned, but the voices seemed to rise in agreement with the chime. Without thinking, I instinctively turned away from the figure and stepped toward the sound. The whispers flooded back in, intertwining with the chime. "Help us! Help us!" The walls shook slightly as the darkness writhed around me. I could feel the energy shift, like an eerie dance of anticipation. The masked figure lunged forward, grasping my arm. "Stop!" I felt a surge of panic and yanked my arm free. "Let me go. I have to find her." My heart thumped heavy against my ribs as I continued toward the sound, driven by urgency. Suddenly, everything went cold. The room plunged deeper into darkness. I could see nothing, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. But then I felt it. a tug at my sleeve. It was firm, yet gentle, like a child's small hand. "Evelyn?" I murmured, suddenly hopeful yet terrified. The hand pulled me deeper into the darkness. "Help me," came a faint whisper. The masked figure's voice broke through the chaos. "No, you have to turn back. You don't know what you're dealing with." Ignoring the urgency in its voice, I followed the tug, guided by the soft whispers that brushed against my skin. This way. But as I moved toward what I hoped was freedom, a sudden jolt of cold dread gripped my heart. I could feel eyes watching me, countless eyes hidden in the shadows, waiting for a misstep. That's when I saw it. A flicker of light, far ahead. Yet just as quickly, darkness surged toward me like a tidal wave, drowning the light. Panic surged. I had to push forward, but a piercing scream erupted around me, freezing me in place. And just then I realized I wasn't alone anymore. The scream faded, but the heavy silence that followed felt worse. Paralyzed, I turned slowly, scanning the suffocating darkness, searching for any sign of what had just moved. That's when I felt it. The chill of breath against my neck, a puff of cold air that sent shivers down my spine. My instincts kicked in and I spun around, but there was nothing there. The panic in my chest flared to life again, the shadows closing in like a living thing. "Evelyn?" I called out, my voice trembling. I wished I could hear a reply, something, anything, to ground me. I took a cautious step forward, the whispers drawing me in once more. They were louder now, a jumble of voices intertwining, haunting and pleading. "Help us!" they cried like a chorus from a nightmare. Gathering my courage, I pushed deeper into the shadows, drawing closer to that flickering light. It pulsed in the darkness, a beacon of hope. Each step felt like wading through thick mud. The dark around me seemed almost alive, swirling and reaching. I forced myself to keep moving, driven by the thought of Evelyn's face. Then an unexpected sound cut through. Footsteps. Behind me. Quick and deliberate. My heart raced. I turned again, darting my eyes around, but saw nothing. The sounds continued, echoing as they grew closer, but I couldn't see a body to accompany them. "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice tinged with desperation. No response. Only the relentless whispering and those ominous footsteps. Panic clawed at my throat. I had to focus. I had to find the light. Pushing through the dark, I finally saw the source of the glimmering glow. A door at the end of the hall, slightly ajar. Relief flooded me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the realization that the footsteps were approaching faster now. I felt a presence behind me, something powerful and suffocating. I bolted toward the door. As I reached for the handle, the whispers crescendoed, a cacophony that enveloped me. "Turn around," they urged, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. I swung the door open and stumbled inside. The light was blinding, pushing back the darkness. But as I stepped through, it flickered, threatening to extinguish completely. Inside the room I froze. There was something, or rather, someone, waiting. A girl stood at the far corner, her back turned to me. My heart leaped. "Evelyn?" I whispered, my voice breaking. She didn't respond, just stood there, still as a statue. I stepped closer, but the shadows followed, slinking through the crack in the door, stretching toward the light. The air thickened again, heavy with tension. "Evelyn!" I called out louder, raising my hand. I needed her to see me. Finally, she turned to face me. Her face was pale, eyes wide, filled with something I couldn't place. Fear, desperation, or maybe confusion. "Help!" she whispered, barely audible over the encroaching darkness. Before I could reply, the door slammed shut behind me. The lock clicked into place. The whispers roared. And then I felt it. A tug of energy, something shifting around us. My skin prickled as I turned to see the shadows flowing toward her, dark fingers reaching out. "Evelyn, no!" But then everything went black again, swallowed by the overwhelming dark. And as the screams echoed once more, I knew that things were about to get much worse. I felt weightless, the pressure of the darkness wrapping around me like a thick fog. My body struggled to move, but it was as if I was encased in something heavy and cold. I blinked, trying to clear the fog from my vision, but I saw nothing, only blackness. Then, like a light switch flickering on, The darkness receded slightly, revealing the shape of Evelyn before me. She was still there, but the shadows ebbed and flowed around her, making it hard to focus. "Evelyn," I croaked, forcing the name from my throat as a wave of desperate relief washed over me. But her expression changed. The dread in her eyes deepened, and she raised a trembling arm, pointing into the dark behind me. "Run!" she gasped. In that instant, the oppressive shadows surged forward, clawing at me as if alive. I clamped my eyes shut, fighting against the swirl of voices. "You need to get out," she yelled, her voice cracking under pressure. Adrenaline took over. I didn't think, I just turned and bolted. Each step felt like running through water, as if the shadows were reaching for my ankles, trying to pull me back. I stumbled over something, a chair, but managed to keep moving, heart pounding, sweat pooling at my temples. The door. I had to get to the door. I barreled toward it, feeling the air grow colder, thick with despair. The whispers combined into a single intense scream, all demanding something from me. Clarity. Recognition. Help. I yanked the door open and squeezed through, practically slamming it shut behind me. Panting, I leaned against the wood, closing my eyes for a moment. But the whispers didn't fade. They followed me into the hall, clawing at my mind. This was no ordinary hospital. Something was wrong, deeply wrong. I turned, surveying the dim corridor. Flickering lights above cast strange shadows, and I could hear the faint hum of machines in the distance. I had to find a way out, a way to ensure Evelyn's safety. Then I noticed a strange object on the floor, a silver locket partially obscured by dirt. Kneeling down, my hands trembled as I picked it up. It felt cold to the touch, unnaturally so. I opened it slowly, expecting to see a photo inside. Instead, there was nothing. Just a strange pattern carved deep into the metal. "What the hell?" I muttered, confused. I was about to put it down when I heard a low growl behind me. My heart dropped. I turned, and there it was, something huge and dark, looming in the shadows. It had glowing eyes, sharp teeth, and a form that twisted and shifted, barely holding a defined shape. I felt the air shrink around me. I wanted to scream and fire a question into the dark, but nothing came out. A sound I could only describe as a low rumble emanated from the figure, a promise of violence. And then it lunged. In that split second, I did the only thing I could think of. I sprinted back down the hall, the locket clutched tight in my hand, the darkness howling at my heels. I had no idea where I was headed, but I had to escape. My thoughts raced as I ran, each question spiraling deeper into terror. Would I find Evelyn again? What was pursuing me? And how did that locket fit into all of this? But before I could dwell on it, I spotted a door at the end of the corridor. Determined, I drove forward. But as I reached for the handle, the whispers erupted into chaos once more, echoing my fear. The door swung open effortlessly, revealing a bright room bathed in white light. Just as I stepped in, a voice called out from the shadows behind me. "Leave her alone." I froze, heart hammering. The voice was familiar, a voice I had hoped to hear. And then everything fell silent. I squinted, trying to process the shadowed figure standing in the doorway. The bright light behind me felt warm, but I couldn't shake the icy grip of fear. "Who are you?" I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure stepped forward, slowly emerging from the shadows. It was Greg, a nurse I had worked with during my late shifts. He looked disheveled, his hair messy, and his scrub stained with what I hoped was just coffee. "Thank God you're okay," he said, his eyes darting toward the door. "You shouldn't be here, it's not safe." "What do you mean? What's going on?" Panic crept into my voice. I glanced back toward the door, half expecting the creature to invade the space behind me. "Evelyn, I have to find her." "Not yet. We need to get out of sight." Greg reached for my arm and pulled me deeper into the bright room. The walls glowed ominously, and for a moment, I felt the pull of a different kind of darkness lurking in the corners. He paced the room looking for something, while holding a finger to his lips. "Did you bring it?" he asked. "Bring what?" I asked, confused. My fingers tightened around the cold locket in my pocket, but I didn't pull it out. "What is happening?" "Your locket. It's key to everything. Now we need to protect it and ourselves. He took a shaky breath, glancing back at the door. They know you have it. They're coming, and he was cut off by a loud crash from behind the door. I moved closer to him, feeling the hairs on my neck stand up. What the hell is going on? How do you know anything about this? Just trust me, he urged, his voice a frantic hiss. Those things, they feed off fear. If they get you, they'll take everything. Before I could respond, a faint scratching echoed from the door. My pulse quickened. Something was trying to get in. I held my breath, waiting. The sound grew louder, claws against metal, a low howl slipping through the cracks. Greg cursed under his breath. We don't have much time, we have to move. He turned, scanning the room for an exit. Then I noticed what he was searching for. 2 small windows near the ceiling, far too high for either of us to reach. I felt frustration rising. What about Evelyn? I said, desperation leaking into my voice. We can't leave her. He shook his head. If we don't get out now, it won't matter. She's not the only one in danger. He pointed to the door. They'll breach it soon. You have to let it go for now. We'll come back, I promise. But right now we need to survive. Torn, I looked between Greg and the door. Each second stretched like eternity. How could I abandon Evelyn? But the dark things were real, and I could feel them gnawing at my mind. Just as I started to agree, the door shuddered violently, splintering wood echoing through the room. Now! Greg shouted, cutting through my panic. Climb! Before I fully grasped what was happening, he hoisted me up, urging me toward the window. I felt weightless again, a rush of air filling my lungs. But I could hear them now, the whispers swirling in a frenzy. I had to decide, escape or stay for Evelyn. As I reached for the window, my heart sank with the weight of my choice. But then I heard another voice, this time familiar, filling me with dread. You can't escape me. I turned, but all I saw was an empty room. And that's when I realized we were not alone. I scrambled upward, desperation coursing through me as Greg shoved me toward the window. Go, he urged, his voice strained. The crash of claws against the door echoed ominously, filling the small room with dread. As fear hung heavily in the air, I clung to the ledge, lifting my leg over in a single frantic motion. I kicked off from the wall and tumbled into the alley behind the hospital, sunlight flooding my senses. I gasped, heart pounding as I lay on the ground, fighting to catch my breath. I should have felt relief. I was out. I had escaped. But the whispers still called my name, weaving their way through my thoughts. Help. Us. Greg scrambled out behind me, his expression frantic. We have to get to the car. He seized my arm, pulling me up. I stumbled, my eyes darting around as I searched for Evelyn. Evelyn, I shouted, panic seeping back in. The shadows loomed, murky and oppressive. Focus! Greg snapped, urgency in his voice. We can't afford to stay here. He began bolting toward an emergency stairwell, and for a moment I hesitated. Was it too late for her? But those dark things threatened to consume me. Just a few paces ahead I could sense their presence. I followed Greg without another thought, my mind racing. We darted down the stairs, each step echoing the frantic rhythm of my heartbeat. Once outside, Greg led me to his car parked in the lot, anxiety hanging thick in the air. The distant crash from within the hospital echoed in my ears. I climbed into the passenger seat, eyes pinned to the entrance, waiting for something, anything, to rush out. Start it up, Greg. My voice trembled as I glanced around. Every moment felt like a lifetime. What about Evelyn? We can't leave her. We will come back, he assured, hands steady on the wheel. But first we need to get away from here. They'll follow us. He turned the key in the ignition, and the engine roared to life. As Greg sped out of the parking lot, I turned to watch the hospital disappear in the rearview mirror. My heart sank. I couldn't shake the feeling that the darkness still lurked, watching, waiting for a chance to reclaim me. But my mind was also reeling with a million thoughts about Evelyn. Would she be all right? The memory of her pale face haunted me. What do we do now? I whispered. Greg sighed, eyes tightly focused on the road ahead. "You have the locket. It's connected to them. Those shadows." I fumbled it from my pocket, cold and heavy in my palm. "Then what does it mean?" "I don't know," he said, his worry palpable. "But we need to figure it out. We can't let them use you, us, whoever they are." I glanced at the locket again, intrigued and terrified. It felt oddly warm now, as if something inside resonated with my touch. "You knew this would happen?" "I suspected something was wrong when I found you there," Greg admitted, his brow furrowing in concentration. "But I didn't think the creatures would get to you. There were always whispers." "Whispers?" My heart raced at the mention of the sinister voices. "The hospital is old. It has a history. Dark energy. Those like Evelyn might be trapped there, and you opened the door with that locket." He threw a cautionary glance at me. "You couldn't have known. But now, we must find a way to hold them back. We have to confront them." As we drove away, I kept glancing back, seeking the haunting remains of that hospital, a place filled with sorrowful echoes. "What if they come for me again?" I asked, my voice trembling. "What if I can't help them?" "I wish I had answers." Greg's eyes darkened with concern. "But we need to dig deep and find where this all began. Don't forget about Evelyn. She's out there, somewhere." The road ahead twisted like a chain of uncertainty. Part of me wanted to dismiss it all, to let the memories fade into oblivion. But each time I looked at the locket, I felt its silent urging, a tether binding me to the darkness we had escaped. We drove in silence, and though we were moving farther away, the shadowy grasp of the hospital still lingered in the corners of my mind. I wasn't sure if I wanted to find answers, or if I was afraid of what I might discover. One thing was certain. The story wasn't over. The darkness wasn't finished with me, and in that knowledge, uncertainty settled in my stomach like an unwanted guest. Would we find Evelyn? Would we uncover the truth behind the whispers? For now I had escaped, but questions swirled relentlessly, each more unsettling than the last, and I knew I couldn't run forever. Soon enough, I would have to return.